Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This one involves a couple of run-ins with government employees, and let me tell you, if you get on their bad side, they can make your life miserable. Buckle up, because this is a long one. It all started back in 2021 when I was working in the permits division for the county, handling drainage and floodplain regulations. A guy named Mike, who lived in an unincorporated area, filed a complaint about his neighbor, a real jerk named Ted who resided in a nearby village. According to Mike, Ted had filled in his property, messing with the drainage and causing flooding on Mike's land whenever it rained more than a drizzle. Mike also mentioned some tension between them, hinting that part of Ted's issue might be that Mike and his partner Dave were a gay couple. That raised a red flag for me, but I tried to stay impartial. I took some photos and told Mike I'd contact the village to find a resolution. I wrote a letter and called the village's building inspector. Let's call him Scumbag Steve. This guy told me the village could do whatever they wanted and there was nothing I could do to stop Ted. Then he made some nasty remark about those types of people, referring to Mike and Dave's sexuality. At that point, I was determined to make sure every single thing on Ted's property was 100% by the book. If there's one thing that gets me fired up, it's bullying. I went back to Mike's place to let him know I was on the case and wouldn't let this slide. Then I started investigating the elevations and fill on both properties. Ted came out, all belligerent, claiming I had no jurisdiction over his land and threatening to call the cops. I calmly radioed for units from both the village and county police departments to join us. When they arrived, I explained that since there was a regulated floodplain on Ted's lot, I did have authority to assess the impact of his fill activities. The cops let Ted know I was well within my rights to proceed. Not long after, Scumbag Steve showed up, berating me for harassing a village resident and threatening to report me to my boss. I invited him to cite the specific codes I was violating. As I marked the floodplain boundaries with chalk for photos, some got on Steve's shoe when he tried to stop me. You should have seen how furious he and Ted were about the bright orange streaks on the lawn. I pointed out I'd done the same on other properties, but they kept whining. It was just chalk that would brush off easily, but they acted like I'd committed a crime. Here's where it gets juicy. I found 2 major violations on Ted's lot fill placed in the floodplain and a shed built partially within it, both big no-nos under federal law. So, the solution had 2 parts. 1. Ted had to remove the fill and shed from the floodplain, and 2. Mike could add fill outside the floodplain on his side to counteract what was left on Ted's. I also advised Mike to install a drain tile to handle any ponding between their properties. Predictably, Ted and Scumbag Steve blew a gasket when I sent the violation notice. This led to a meeting at the county office with them, my boss, and me. Things quickly escalated, with Steve screaming about abuse of power and whatnot until the department head stepped in and told them to comply or face fines. Here's the kicker. Ted had to apply for a permit, and guess who got to review and approve it? Yep, yours truly. Now, I followed the letter of the law, but you have to understand, government workers are underpaid and overworked. Funny how Mike's permit sailed through with no issues, while Ted's got scrutinized to the last detail. Could I have been abusing my authority a bit? Maybe, but my turnaround times were well within acceptable limits. It's not my fault they filed incorrectly 3 times before finally getting it right. If they'd come to the office for assistance like everyone else, I would have helped ensure a smooth first submission. But since they wanted to be difficult, I didn't cut them any slack. Long story short, the situation got resolved, but it took way more effort than necessary. The moral? Don't be an entitled, bigoted asshat, or you might find yourself on the wrong side of an ornery government official. The next one is an entitled people story. Having a pool in my backyard has always been a dream of mine. I worked hard to be able to afford a house with enough space to install one. The day it was finally finished was one of the happiest of my life. I invited some close friends over for a pool party to celebrate. We were having a great time until one of my friends noticed movement out of the corner of their eye. We turned to see my neighbor Tom letting himself into my backyard through the side gate. Without even acknowledging us, he walked right over to the pool and jumped in. My friends and I were stunned. We watched in disbelief as Tom started doing laps in my brand new pool like he owned the place. After getting over the initial shock, I got out of the pool and walked over to the edge. "Tom," I called out, "what are you doing?" He paused his swimming and treaded water as he looked at me. "Oh, hey, I saw you had the pool finished, so I figured I'd come try it out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This is my private property. You can't just invite yourself over to use my pool whenever you feel like it." Tom laughed as if I had told a joke. "Don't be silly, we're neighbors, so that means I can use your pool too." My blood was starting to boil at his audacity. "No, you can't. I did not give you permission to be here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Wow, no need to be so uptight," Tom replied dismissively. I'm just going for a quick swim. It's no big deal. I was done with this conversation. I walked back over to my friends who were still in disbelief at what they were witnessing. I told them I was calling the police to report a trespasser since Tom refused to leave my property. 15 minutes later, 2 police officers showed up. I brought them to the backyard and explained the situation. They asked Tom to get out of the pool so they could talk to him. "What seems to be the problem here?" one officer asked Tom. "There's no problem, officer. I was just using my neighbor's pool with his permission." Tom lied through his teeth. I spoke up immediately. "That is absolutely not true. I never gave him permission to be here. I want him removed from my property for trespassing." The other officer turned to me. "Can you confirm this is your property?" I nodded and provided my ID and paperwork showing I owned the home. The officers accepted that as proof and turned their attention back to Tom. "Sir, the homeowner has made it clear you do not have permission to be here. You need to collect your belongings and leave the premises immediately." Tom scoffed and tried to argue, but the officer stood firm. Eventually, he threw his hands up dramatically, gathered his things, and left, making sure to give me a dirty look on his way out. I thanked the officers for their help. Once Tom was gone, I was able to resume my pool party with my friends. But the whole experience left a bad taste in my mouth. This was not the first time Tom had invited himself onto my property without permission. In the past, he's come into my backyard to use my grill or lounge on my patio furniture. Each time I've asked him to leave, but he always acted offended, as if I was being unreasonable. It was clear Tom had no respect for personal property or boundaries. I worried that even though the police removed him today, he would continue trespassing to use my pool whenever he felt like it. I decided to take further action to make sure that didn't happen. The next day, I had a trespass notice drawn up that prohibited Tom from entering my property without permission. I went over to his house and had him served with the notice. Tom looked surprised when he opened the door and saw the sheriff's deputy there to deliver the legal notice. "You're really doing this just because I used your pool once?" Tom asked incredulously after reading the notice. "This isn't just about the pool," I replied. "You've trespassed repeatedly in the past as well. The notice makes it clear you are not allowed onto my property for any reason without my explicit permission." Tom crumpled up the notice and tossed it aside. "Whatever, man, this is ridiculous." He tried to close the door, but I stopped him. "Make sure you read that carefully. If you violate the notice, you can be arrested for trespassing." I left feeling confident I had done what needed to be done. Surely a legal notice would make Tom think twice before trespassing again. Of course, I underestimated his sense of entitlement. Just a few days later, I was relaxing in my backyard when I heard noises coming from the pool area. I was stunned to see Tom swimming in my pool yet again. It was like déjà vu. "What on earth are you doing?" I exclaimed. "Did you not get served with a trespass notice barring you from my property?" "Yeah, I got that stupid notice," Tom replied nonchalantly. "I crumpled it up and threw it out. You're being completely ridiculous with this whole thing." I was seeing red. Not only was he trespassing again, but he clearly had zero regard for the law. I immediately called the police and also notified the sheriff's office that the notice had been violated. Within 20 minutes, deputies from the sheriff's office arrived. They walked straight over to Tom, who was still casually swimming laps. "Get out of the pool, sir. You are under arrest for trespassing," the deputy informed him. "Are you kidding me?" Tom shouted angrily as he climbed out of the water. "I'm just trying to cool off. Now you want to arrest me?" "You were properly informed you are not legally permitted on this property," the deputy replied while handcuffing Tom. "You chose to violate that notice, which means you are committing a crime." Tom continued to argue and resist, but the deputies stood firm. They Mirandized him and led him away in handcuffs, with him yelling obscenities at me the whole time. I found out later that because Tom was served with a legal trespass notice, the consequences for violating it were significantly more severe. He spent 2 days in jail and was slapped with a hefty fine. But most importantly, he finally got the message that he cannot use my property without permission. Ever since his arrest, I have not had a single issue with Tom trespassing. He won't even make eye contact with me anymore when I see him around the neighborhood. The whole experience was extremely frustrating, but I'm satisfied knowing that firm legal action resulted in Tom learning his lesson. I can finally relax and enjoy my pool without worrying about uninvited guests. It just goes to show you have to stand up for your rights as a homeowner if someone repeatedly crosses the line. After all, your property is your domain and no one else is entitled to it without your say-so. The next one is a petty revenge story. I was driving through my neighborhood. It was developed in the 1940s and has narrow streets and a lot of on-street parking, and I encounter a delivery truck with its lift gate extended, parked crooked across the road, blocking the flow of traffic. The way the truck was positioned, if the driver had pulled forward another 3 feet, they could have allowed for the passage of traffic. As I pull up, I see the two delivery men using a dolly to move a refrigerator into the house. I signal to them and ask if they can pull forward a couple feet to allow me and others to pass. The driver signals back to me with the one-finger salute and continues to move the fridge into the house. I wait until they're inside and the storm door closes. I jump into the cab, the truck had been left running, and pull the truck forward the few feet necessary. As I exit, I turn the truck off, remove the key, single key, tiny paper fob, and throw the key into the across-the-street neighbor's lot, a few houses down with a terribly unkept yard. As I'm pulling away, the delivery guys come back out of the house. I give them my best Princess Di wave, followed by my own one-finger salute, and kept on driving. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So I worked security for a major military contractor at one point. Our supervisor liked using our random search number as a tool for punishment for perceived grievances with us. Normally, our search number was something around 15, 25, meaning we would only pull over and search every 15th car in every contractor truck. It was very cold and very miserable in the mornings when we would suddenly have a couple hundred employees and contractors show up between 0500 0800. This day, our supervisor got upset because when he came in at 0400 for his day shift, he was the 15th car, deciding that he must now ruin everyone else's day, even though we did our best to search his vehicle promptly, but completely, so he couldn't say we weren't doing the searches completely. So he set the day shift search number to 3, so we complied. There was only enough room for 3 cars, trucks to be pulled over at once, and once that was done, we would usually stop searches until the others were completed, keeping traffic moving. Not today. This time, we filled the search area and then stopped traffic until all 3 vehicles were cleared, then allow 2 cars through, pull over the third, allow 2, pull third, allow 2, pull third, stop all traffic, and start searches. We ended up with a line of cars waiting to get into the plant that went 2 miles long. It got so long the local police got involved up the road as people were blocking traffic in some intersections. Then came the phone call from a 3-star general that stuck in that said traffic a mile up the road. Suddenly, we were called to cease all searches for the morning. I later heard that it had been too little too late to cancel the ridiculous searches, and our major military contractor lost a $1 billion contract out of the deal. And that supervisor was initially going to be fired, but negotiated his way to just being busted down to a regular guard. We were union, so he started lowest on the seniority chart and got stuck working all the mandatory overtime and all the worst posts, including the one he had made miserable that morning. The next one is an entitled people story. To make note, I was a third-party witness to this. Firstly, allow me to go through the preamble to describing the location, etc. It will make sense in the end, and it will give you a clear picture how the entitlement in the end was a problem. I live in what is known as a block of flats here in the UK, also known as apartments outside the UK. We have 3 blocks of flats at the end of a row of houses. For our use, we have a communal car park with a row of garages splitting it in half. You could practically describe the layout of the car park as the capital letter F. At the bottom of the F is the entrance-exit. In the gap between the 2 horizontal parts of the letter is the row of garages. So basically, the letter F is the space for parking. The gap between the garages and the pavement, sidewalk, was enough for a single car to be parked while cars take turns passing through to reach the top part of the F. As part of the car park, there is a public path leading to the local, public council-owned golf course. You do need to pay to use the golf course, though. So with this public access, during the spring and summer, we do get golfers that park up in our car park and walk onto the golf course to avoid paying to use the golf course. This access also has the nice effect of luring daily dog walkers to come by, whether they live locally or the other side of town, so they come in their car and take up space. My home overlooks the car park. In fact, I could stand out on my balcony and talk to people walking by with their dogs. Well, one day I was in my living room when I started hearing a car horn. I didn't react to it because it's something that happens now and then. People honking their horns instead of using their phone or going to the block of flats to get a person's attention. A few minutes later, the honking starts up again and again. Sometimes it was as if the driver kept their hand on the horn. After about 10 minutes of the constant honking, I decided to be nosy and looked outside. Instantly, I could see what had happened. Someone had parked their Mercedes in the gap at the end of the garages where someone else had parked up against the pavement. So the Mercedes was blocking traffic from exiting the top half of the car park. The honking was a mother, with kids in the car trying to leave. As she was blocked in, she was trying to get people's attention to move their car. I just stepped out on my balcony to watch. Almost 7 minutes later, a man with 2 dogs returned from the golf course. He bundled the dogs into the back of the Mercedes, and as he went for the driver's door, he flipped the middle finger at the mother before reversing, turning around and driving off. The irony is there was enough parking spaces available to park 5 cars. I shook my head and re-entered my home to continue with what I was doing before this. The next one is an entitled parent's story. I have posted here before, so maybe this is an update of sorts. My 68-year-old mother is losing her mind. Has been for a while now. We knew she had been conversing with several people online for over a year, most of which claimed to be famous men, and all of which needed money for various things. We had been telling her since December that she was being scammed, tried involving DHR and the agency who helps protect seniors, all falling on deaf ears. Courts won't do anything without a medical diagnosis, neurologist appointments take months, so we're just stuck trying to keep her from self-destructing until then. End of February, she finally admits she needs help. Actually, she called my brother and said she was broke and he needed to fix it, but we'll say that was asking for help. Per the bank, her home was a few hours from going into foreclosure on the day we got the call from her, and her utilities were turned off the very next week. She has over $1,000,000 in credit card debt, most of it from sending these men pictures of every single credit card she has. She also gave them all of her bank account information and sent at least $3,000 in cash via Bitcoin ATMs or prepaid gift cards. I'm not sure I'll ever know exactly what she has spent on them, but I do know she owes $7,000 in taxes this year from all the withdrawals she made to her retirement, which she freely admits she sent to these men. She also still swears every one of them are actually all the celebrities they claim to be, and still truly believes one of them is the love of her life. My brother and I told her the only way we'd help is if she gave us power of attorney, which she did. We then caught up her house payments and reconnected the utilities. I have been going through her bills as I pay all of them and trying to help her budget, including finding her cheaper internet, TV, and cell phone plans so she'll be able to pay her own bills going forward on her fixed income. She has been beyond nasty to me every step of the way, telling me what a disappointment I am and she wishes I was never born. There have been suicide threats, to which she laughed in my face and told the police she would never do anything that dramatic. She calls me almost daily and tells me she fell, only for myself or the ambulance to rush over and have her admit she wasn't actually hurt, but was hoping a trip to the ER would get her pain meds. I took her phone, created a new Apple ID, and had it set so she couldn't text or call anyone not saved in her contacts, and she can't add people or numbers or apps without my approval. Only thing short of changing her number I could do to stop her contact with these scammers. She adamantly refused to change the number because she's had that one for 30 plus years. But she has still been getting hundreds of texts from 6-digit numbers, I'm guessing, because she responded to them in the past, so they were able to get around the block. I have told her 1,000 times not to even open them, delete them, or send them to junk. She had hip replacement surgery this past week. While in the hospital, she received a text telling her she won a free oxygen machine. Call this number to claim your prize. She texts me and tells me she needs to add this number to her phone because it's a home health medical equipment company, and she wants to talk to them about Life Alert, so I add their number. She calls and they tell her she just needs to give them her bank account information to cover the shipping, and she gives it to them. Then she calls to crow about her winnings. I call the same number, and what do you know? I'm also an instant winner if I will just give them my bank account information, hit 0 to speak with a person, and now I've won a free year of DirecTV. Hit 0 again, and now I've won a free year of pest control from Terminix if I just enter my bank account information. So a total scam that my mother has again fallen for while laying in her hospital bed recovering from surgery. Like the last 2 months didn't happen, like she has learned nothing from this whole experience. She does not even need an oxygen machine, but decided that since her parents had breathing issues at the end of their lives, and because it was free, this opportunity was too good to pass up in case she needs one later. She tells me to just call them back and cancel, because I'm sure the kind phone scammers will totally forget your bank account if I just ask nicely. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, she has been showing signs of progressive dementia, and is at moderately severe cognitive decline on the staging models. So I get it, this is the new normal for her. She no longer possesses the mental capacity to understand real from fake, and she will continue to fall for stuff like this as long as she's alive. And I can't do anything to stop it. I can just crawl along behind her and try to fix it while hoping she shows up to the neuro in May so I can get the courts to intervene. She will always be a danger to herself and her own well-being, with the added bonus of being awful to me every step of the way, so I have decided I am done trying to save her from herself. I'm opening another new bank account for her tomorrow and putting what little money she still has in it. I have turned off all the automatic payments that have been coming out of my account, and will be turning off all of the parental controls I had established on her electronics. Then I'm telling her good luck, don't call me when you're on fire again, and then I'm blocking her on my phone. My brother and I believe she'll be in a mess again by the 4th of July. Her problem, not ours. I have had a heart issue for 2 years now, inappropriate sinus tachycardia that isn't responding to medications. Both of my cardiologists have told me that stress is exacerbating my condition. I've lost 25 pounds over the last 3 months, which I'm also chalking up to stress. I literally cannot explain the peace I feel in my soul tonight, knowing that I have done everything I could for this woman and now I just get to be done tomorrow. It's complicated and sad and frustrating because oh, how I have tried to help her and I know how this will end. But it's also so very calming to know that I'm done. I'm free. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.